Nata Nukampamanasa Ime Sakare Dukatapanna Kalabhute Patikan Hatu Amhaka Dikaratang Hitaya Sukhai Arahang Sama Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi Suakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vijja Charana Sampanno Sugato Lokavidu Anuttaro Purissa Dhammasarati Satate Vamanusana Buddho Bhagava Tamahan Bhagavantang Abhipujayami Tamahang Bhagavantang Sirasa Namami Suakato Bhagavata Dhammo Sanditiko Akaliko Ehipassiko Opanayiko Pachatang Veditabo Vinyuhi Tamahang Dhammang Abhipujayami Tamahang Dhammang Sirasa Namami Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Ujjupatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Jaya Patipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Sami Chipatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Yadidang Chattari Purisa Yugani Atta Purisa Pugala Esa Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Ahuneyo Pahuneyo Dakineyo Anjali Karaniyo Anuttarang Punya Ketang Lokasa Tamahang Sanghang Abhipujayami Tamahang Sanghang Sirasa Namami
The Metta Sutta. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, not busy with duties, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm, and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety. May all beings be happy, whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born. May all beings be happy. Let none deceive another, or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another, even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, free from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding, by not holding to false views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Oh. Okay, now my laughter stops when I see the question. Oh boy. We've got an extra half an hour, so should make a dent in these. What do we do? Make a resolution. We'll finish the questions, and then we can lock the doors, and only when we finish the questions we can open the doors and let people out. Is that a good idea? Sorry? Oh, that's cheating. Okay, here we go. Now what I'm going to do... Okay. What I'm going to do the ones at the bottom first of all. They've probably been here for weeks. Okay, here's the very, very first question. Here it comes. I had, not me, I never wrote this. I had an abortion at 12 weeks. That wasn't me. Sorry. Straight away. Not for no medical reason. I was young. Will I go to hell realms for this decision? No, you won't. Your boyfriend will. No, of course he won't. Even though I have this Buddhist path now and try to do good by living the Eightfold Path, coming on retreats, will this direct my mind when I die? No. Why do people have guilt trips? If you did something wrong, if you think it's wrong, what was it, 12 weeks? I don't know, 3 months. There's something which I always was impressed with. In Buddhism, they said that life begins when there is consciousness manifests in the mother's womb, in that embryo or fetus. So basically, it is not a being yet until it has enough sensory apparatus to manifest consciousness. So if it's very young, you cannot say you're killing something. It's not alive yet to be killed. It's depending on its mother's consciousness at the very beginning. It's not independent. I like saying that because this is a problem which I never faced in this life. And I feel a huge amount of sympathy for every lady who's decided to have an abortion for one reason or another. All the times when they do make that decision, it's a very traumatic, difficult decision. And I feel I'm being just very unkind if, I sort of criticize them for anything. Or to say, that is hell, and you're going to go to hell, and just be totally unsympathetic. I remember when somebody asked my opinion, they say they've got a fetus in the womb, I don't know, an embryo or whatever, I forgot the language. Well, what maturity is it called, not a fetus, but an embryo?
I think it's around 12 weeks.
It's around 12 weeks.
Yeah.
So it's on the edge there somewhere. So it's not that developed yet. And usually, that it's not just the action. I focused on the action first of all. Is it killing? And if it's very young, it's not. Number two, what was your intention? Why did you do that? And I said I never seen a case. Many women have come up to me and asked me, and there's one particular woman, I remember she was very concerned. She needed to do an abortion, and she was saying, what is it going to be? Is it going to really kill me? What should I do? And I told her, I can never make that decision for her. But one thing I will always do, I say, whichever decision you make, I will never criticize you. And I'll be your friend, before or afterwards, as a monk. Because whichever way that decision goes, it's not a decision the same way that you kill a human being because you're upset or angry at them. How many people are angry at the fetus or which one is it? Fetus first or embryo first? Embryo first and then the fetus. You're not angry at that fetus. It's not done through ill will. You're making a decision in the best interest of everybody. So don't be so concerned about it. Number two, if it was a being, you usually find that being has another try to come into the womb. That's the other thing which I've noticed. sometimes we're not that Buddhist. We think, oh, we've only got one chance, that being coming into the womb, and it doesn't make it because we give it an abortion. What happens next? How many times have you actually seen, or I've told you those stories, like that Thai lady who was pregnant, and she was about to give birth a day or two before. The baby, there was sort of, the embryo just hardly developed. Oh no, it was almost about to be born. And it strangled itself on the umbilical cord. And so it was stillborn. And I know all those details because I did a funeral ceremony for them. And I must admit, I was really impressed with how they handled everything. At the funeral ceremony, they tilted, he was a boy called Charlie, they tilted up the coffin, and so you could actually see the new kid. They dressed him up, and they took a photograph of him. I was involved in that photograph. He got into the family album. And then, what I never noticed at the time, they told me afterwards, with a biro pen, they drew a line on the baby's heel. And then it was cremated. She was a healthy woman. Maybe a few months later, she got pregnant again. And this time, the doctors gave really incredible care for her. They didn't want her to go through the same tragedy again. So she gave birth to a healthy baby, and that baby had a birthmark on its heel. The same kid. Didn't make it the first time, had another go. And I tell the simile, it's so close to when you go to the airport to travel somewhere to see your favorite band in Hong Kong, and you find that you don't make it. You're bumped off the flight. But then something happens and they give you, so yeah, there is a place. And a lot of the time, if you get bumped off the flight, you get the next available flight with an upgrade. So the new baby was a girl. Called Anne, Marianne. And that was Charlie reborn. And I was really fascinated that he would come to the temple in Nolamara on the weekends. And you see little Marianne, or Anne as she was known, just grow up. When she was really young, she was like a tomboy. Quite obviously why, because it was Charlie reborn. And when she got about 7, then she feminized. And she got used to her identity as a woman. That's what happened. It didn't make it the first time, but have another go. And that is not uncommon. So if you do, for one reason or another, decide to have an abortion, just give that being a lot of loving kindness, share merits, and it's not an evil thing you do. You don't go to a hell realm for that. The same as when somebody commits suicide. If you're really fed up and you decide to deliberately kill yourself, do you go to hell afterwards? No. I don't know why monks keep saying that. Imagine you're the mother and your kid, for one reason or another, commits suicide, and your monk comes and said, oh, he's going to go to hell now, he killed himself. That's really cruel to the mother and the father and the other people as well. You don't judge a life by how it ends. That's why somebody asked me in the interviews today. I didn't have the full opportunity to answer them. Is it so that your last thought is the most important? It is important, but you find there's no such thing as a last thought. It's always last thoughts. Not just one thought. Even the dying. How many doctors are here when is the point of time when a person does actually die? Dying is not a point in time, it's a process over many minutes. Which thought is the last thought? It's the last thought. And also, it's just not just the last thought which decides on where you're going next. You can't judge a person by just the last thought. It's all the other thoughts and actions you've done in your life accountable. So you make the whole judgment on the whole life. Were they a good person? Not just how they died. So when you understand karma properly, and the results of karma, life is not so unfair and so cruel. If you've lived a good life, you've been a kind, good person, it's not just, if you did an abortion when you were young, you thought it was the best idea. Whatever you do, you learn. You accept, you learn, and you become a better person as a result, hopefully. And that's the way the karma works. I haven't mentioned this yet, but that's one of the two great insights. I was talking about insight meditation this morning. I'm going to carry on tomorrow morning. And what are the basic insight meditations? The big ones is what the Buddha called Te-Vijja, what the Buddha got insight into under the Bodhi tree, what made him enlightened. And the first one was rebirth. He understood that. He remembered many of his rebirths. And that was an insight. That's one of the reasons why when you asked those questions on rebirth yesterday night, I was very happy to answer them as an introduction to what insight meditation really was for the Buddha. And the second one, which the Buddha remembered, once he remembered many past lives, he could understand how karma works. Not through theory, but through experience. What happens? What is the last thought? How does it affect the future life? Yes, the last thought is important, but it's not crucial. And then you find out just in things like abortions. Please don't ever say that a lady goes to hell because of that. That is really misogynistic. I'm being quite tough here, because I've heard too much of it and I think it's totally unfair. And it's not true either. Depends why you do things like that. What was the motivation? And because, obviously this lifetime I've never been pregnant, but I've talked to a lot of ladies who are pregnant and they have to make their decision. And my job is to be compassionate, to be kind. That's how life works. Please excuse me if I offend you, but often I've also taught about the law of karma. Imagine that I was one of these heavenly beings who met people to decide, or don't actually decide, to encourage them to remember so they can go to the appropriate place after they die. Suppose that the first person I met, the time scale is a bit off, I met Adolf Hitler. What would I do to him? All those people he was responsible for killing, where would he be sent to? If I was the person in charge, I would say, yes, you killed cruelly so many people, but you loved your mother. Have you read that book which I wrote? I think it was in Opening the Door of Your Heart. There was a poem in there. And it inspired me when I first read the poem, just by itself, of how you should never get angry at your mum, no matter what she does. If she keeps asking, you just give. Yeah, it takes up your time. She may be a bit cranky, but she's your mother. Love her. Now, if you get angry at her, always remember that one day she won't be there to be cranky at you. and you miss her terribly. So always help her. And then I thought that was a nice poem, not brilliant, but it's just a nice poem. And then I read the author, Adolf Hitler. That really blew me away. That he could actually feel so much and he loved his mother so well. And for me, if I was any judge, I would say, okay, we're going to change your hairstyle, shave off that silly moustache, and give you a new name, and you can come into heaven. But just don't tell anyone what you were. And that's even the same. I'm being serious here. You know, if I had to decide on Donald Trump, I would say, oh, come on, you made a few mistakes. But you know, you're trying your best. You're a bit silly sometimes. I would let everybody into heaven. You know, that's my nature. You know that. I think it's a good thing to do. Anyway, you can argue with me if you want, but that's how I feel. So if you've done an abortion, come on. You don't go to hell. That's not going to help you. You want to know my hell story? This is a hell story. I was going to say this tomorrow, but I'm going to say it this evening. There was this Christian priest, and at his congregation and his sermon on a Sunday, there was a new person who came to his church who was very wealthy, but he was a very smart person, a doctor of philosophy, PhD. And so after the sermon, the professor raised his hand and said, "Is it really true that non-Christians cannot go to heaven? What about all these wonderful people in history? Marcus Aurelius, Mahatma Gandhi, he wasn't a Christian. The Buddha, they were known to be excellent moral people. What about some of the others who were wonderful people? Mahatma Gandhi and... sorry?
Mother Teresa.
She was a Christian, yeah. So she's supposed to go to heaven. That was the African, Nelson Mandela. Thank you. That's what I was trying to think of. Nelson Mandela wasn't a Christian. What happens to people like that? Where do they go when they die? And so the priest was smart enough. He said, "That's such a deep question. I will answer it next week." There's an old statement: if you don't know, procrastinate. So Monday was when they take a rest. Tuesday went to go and see one of his friends, who was another priest, and his other friend said, "Oh, that's too difficult for me. You should go and see the bishop." So on Wednesday he went to see the bishop. The bishop said, "Oh, no, I can't really answer that. You need to see the archbishop." And so I went to see the archbishop on the Thursday. The archbishop said, "That's really, really difficult question. You need to go and see one of these theologians at the university." So on a Friday he went to see the theologian, and the theologian said, "Nope, that's too difficult for me as well. What you need to do is go into the library and search the books and find out the answer for yourself." So on Saturday, the day before the sermon, he went to the library and he read all these books, and they were so unintelligible that he didn't get an answer also. And it was Saturday night, and he thought, what I should have done at the beginning. I will stay up late and pray. And he was so worried and so tired, when he started praying, he fell fast asleep. And when he fell fast asleep, he had this dream. And in this dream, he was at the train station. And he saw a train ready to leave. And he asked the conductor, "This train about to leave, it wouldn't be going to a place called heaven, would it? And the conductor said, yes, correct, it's going to heaven. Seeing as though you're a priest, you can get in there for free. So the priest got on the train, choo, 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 choo. After a little while, it landed in a, or didn't land, but it went into a station. And there you saw the words H-E-A-V-E-N, heaven. And so he got out, and he asked the first person there, what's this place called? And the guy said, this is heaven, welcome. And he said, just wait for a little while. There's, in this place, was anyone here called Gandhi? Gandhi? Never heard of him. What about Mandela? Nope. Haven't heard of him either. This guy called Buddha? No one here by that name. He had his answer. But he said, I better be really firm. So he saw another train in that station, and he asked the conductor, this train, they wouldn't be going to a place called hell, would it? He said, yes. So he actually, this time, he had to buy a ticket, return, of course. So I went in the train, and after a short time, it pulled into another station, and it had the names on the outside, H-E-L-L. So he got out. He didn't even need to go and search for someone to ask. Someone came right up to him and said, welcome, thank you for coming. Are you tired? Do you want something to drink, some water, orange juice, some tea? We've got some very nice chai here. He said, and they were really nice. He said, look, thank you. And the person, they met him, said, no, sit down, you're tired. And he was very kind, this guy. And so he said, look, very nice of you to look after me. And actually it's quite weird because no one was nice to me when I arrived in heaven. Oh, that's okay. And he said, look, I just want to answer a simple question. Is there anyone down here by the name of Nelson Mandela? Oh, such an amazing fellow. He just doesn't want anything for himself, but he's just worked so hard to make sure there's harmony in this place. What about Gandhi? Gandhi! Oh, we all love Mahatma Gandhi. This wonderful, wise, kind Indian fellow. He's just amazing. And then he asked a big question. What about the Buddha? And then the guy in hell put his hand up and said, oh, Namo Tassa Bhagavata. And then the priest said, look, according to how I was taught, I expected these people to be down here. But I never expected hell to be so kind and so soft and so comfortable and so loving. And the guy said, oh, yes. It used to be like that before the Buddha came down here. And Mahatma Gandhi and the other fellow. And the point was, and it's a great truth, people who make the place doesn't make the people. Is Jhana Grove nice? You make it nice. The bricks are just bricks. The wood is just wood. You have food here, but it's the people who bring the food with love. That's what makes it beautiful. People make the place doesn't make the people. So the idea of, oh, you had an abortion, you have to go to hell. No way. Does that explain it? Hopefully. Of course the Buddha never went to hell. I was just saying that because it's the Dhamma of it. Okay. Dear Ajahn, could you please talk a bit more about why you prefer the word contentment instead of equanimity for the fourth Brahmavihara? Why does that word work better what do you think about the words used when translated to English to describe the other Brahmaviharas? Thank you. The reason why I prefer contentment, because equanimity is kind of like too dull, like boring. You don't prefer one or the other, it's like you got no preference there. But in each one of these Brahmaviharas, and each one of these jhanas, when you learn to do meditation properly, it's incredibly joyful. I just made that simile up about, hell. If a Buddha went down there, it'd be a fantastic place. So much joy, so much happiness, so much contentment. Equanimity has not got that emotional flavor of joy to it. Contentment does. Sometimes, you have a rest and you wake up and then you feel so content, so happy. Sometimes I have a cup of tea when I wake up and that tea is so delicious. I literally know how to make a delicious cup of tea. I do that on purpose. Some of you make a delicious cup of tea for me. And I often tell you, thank you. And when it's like that delicious, you have this beautiful sense of contentment. There's nothing wrong in the world. And that kind of peace, you don't want anything, but there's a deep sense of joy inside. And that's what happens with that contentment. The other 4 Brahmaviharas, metta, loving kindness, that's a pretty good translation. Not just love, we add the kindness. Because love can get very confused. You love your family members, love your partner in life, you love your kids. But it's more than just love, it's a kindness as well. You want to have the opportunity to do something for them. And that is one of the problems I have. There's things which I like being simple. One thing you will notice in me, that I don't really feel the cold. I enjoy the cold. And how many times you've ever seen me wearing socks? Honestly. Never. You saw me in the UK recently. Did I wear socks? Even if it's cold, I still don't wear socks. But once, this was a couple of occasions, I went to see somebody who was in hospital with a cancer over in Melbourne. And Melbourne's a very cold town sometimes. Sometimes I felt so sad for the young women in Melbourne when I went there once, because they were wearing this fashion, halters, whatever their skirt or trousers finished down here, and their uppers just, finished, was not just covering the gap between their trousers and skirt or whatever, and their top. They had the bare skin around their chest. And it was blue. Because it was so cold. And I felt so sorry. I thought, that's not fair. Why do you have to do that? It's a cold state. But anyway, when I went into the hospital to see this lady who really wanted to see me, and so I went there and she said, can I give you a gift? She gave me some socks. And I never told her I don't wear socks. I never said that. I just put them on. And when I put them on, I was smart enough. She never noticed me doing this. I could see through the window. Her window in her room was overlooking the car park. So when I left and went down on the lift to the lower floor and went out of the hospital into the car park, I did a dance, kicking on my feet so she could see my socks. And I looked up at her room and so she could actually see. That created her some happiness, and me some happiness. It's a simple thing. Or this other Sri Lankan lady over in Nolamara Centre, she gave me some socks, and I put them on. Now don't you do this to me, okay? I'm not making a suggestion. She she gave me some socks and I put them on, in the toilet. And then I walked into the Dhamma center in Nolamara Temple. And I usually cross my legs for the meditation. And then, so you can't see my feet. You didn't know if I had socks on or not. But then while I was meditating, just towards the end, I just moved a bit. And of course I looked out the corner of my eye. He's wearing my socks! He's wearing my socks! I kind of enjoyed that. It's such a simple thing to do, but it brings people joy. I took them off afterwards because my poor feet were just so hot. But anyway, that's what you do. You're kind to people. So that's a little thing you can do, just wear whatever they give you. And I think that's a beautiful part of monastic life. Sometimes you give me food and say, please eat this, and so I do. That's why I've got this big tummy. It's your fault, not mine. But the worst thing was when I had a cough or something, or felt a bit sick. I only did this once, I've never done this again. Because you'd come up to me and said, this medicine is really good, it worked for me. So you must take it, okay? And I said, okay. And give me this medicine. And someone else comes up and said, this medicine is really more powerful. Please, you must take this. And I said, okay. Another person comes up. And one of the things, I have to keep my precepts. If I promise to take it, I will. And this evening, I got so much medicine which I promised to take, that really made me sick. Much more sick than I was beforehand. But that's important. If you promise, you have to keep promises. That's just like, there was one lady here, many of you know her, Ronnie. She was part of our youth group once, years ago. And the youth group over in Dhammaloka, they come and have a nice discussion and talk about Dhamma. And afterwards, it was a warm afternoon, so they went to the beach afterwards. But then they couldn't get to the beach. Their car, they couldn't open the boot to get, I think, some cushions out or something. And they've been trying for half an hour to put the key in the boot and open it. They'd called the RAC, but the RAC hadn't come yet. They were busy. So I came walking past, and so Ronnie said, Ajahn Brahm, you got all the powers, can you open the boot for us? And I wouldn't let an opportunity go that easily. So I told her, Ronnie, I will open the boot if you promise, if I open it the first go, that you will become a bhikkhuni. And she thought, nah, Ajahn Brahm can't open this boot. We've been trying for half an hour. So she said yes. So I put the key in, meditated, some loving kindness, turned the key, and it opened first time. Oh, he said. And I thought I already had her. And I could ordain her as a bhikkhuni. Do you know what happened next? The other youth group leader, she was a trainee lawyer. And she said, yes, she promised she'd become a bhikkhuni. She never said when. I'm going to ban lawyers from my youth group. But that was good fun. Anyway, so, okay. 2 went down, that's even better. Okay, thank you, oh dear. Next question. Dear Ajahn, how does bhavana meditation relate to or fit in with anapanasati? Bhavana meditation is what you develop. It's in the forest monasteries. We say, now what do you do? Anapanasati, vipassana. We do bhavana, developing. It's just a lovely word, for meditation, which includes everything. So what we do, we develop the kindfulness, the loving kindness, the ability to sit there and just watch things like the breath and see it all disappear and bliss out. You develop it. So it's just like these Pali words and how they was used in Thailand when I was a young monk. You do bhavana. It includes anapanasati, it includes vipassana, it includes loving kindness meditation. Oh, the other three of the what was it called? Of the four divine abidings: metta, loving kindness; karuna, which was compassion. That's when you see someone else suffering, and you just zap them. You're kind to them, to see their suffering vanish. That's beautiful. You see a little animal having a difficult time, like the kangaroos you see. And there was apparently last night, there was a kangaroo, it's a joey, you found had been hit by a car and was dead. Was it in front of the monastery or in front of, yeah. So I did ask him, I said, are you sure it was dead? Because, on the Fridays, sometimes people get resurrected. Please excuse me. But anyway, sometimes that happens. So we always try to be kind, no matter what we have. Once the start of one range retreat, there was a mother got hit by a car and killed outside the gate of the monastery. And so straight away they told me about that. And of course, as you should all know, if it's a mother, did you check inside the pouch? Because someone said sometimes there's a joey inside. And they did, and there was one inside. It was lovely to see it, just all the guests, especially the ladies, got it first. And I had it in a nice sack, warming it up. And we found out some more information how to look after joeys who've just had their mother deceased. And so we looked after that joey. And we asked the ladies who took most care of it, said, was that difficult for you? They said, oh no! That was the start of the rains retreat, and they really enjoyed that. They were practicing some compassion and loving kindness. This little baby, who was still healthy, it lived. We found a place where we could send it to look after it, so it could learn all the things which a kangaroo should learn, usually from its mother, but they had a place where they could train and teach it. So it lived to be a very happy kangaroo. But it was very hard for those ladies who were looking after it to give it up. It's easy to let go of many other things in life, but that nice little joey, it was just so sweet and so kind and warm. So anyway, craving for self-improvement leads to suffering. And yet without this craving, there can be lack of progress in life. Please comment, Ajahn, thank you. You try to self-improve, but why? Okay, here's one of my other stories. I haven't told this one yet. When I was young, I was fortunate. I was good at school, but I was also good at soccer. I loved playing soccer in the street and in the park. I spent so many hours of my life playing soccer. So I wasn't that bad at soccer, but then my parents and my teachers said, stop playing soccer, you got your O-levels to finish. The first exams. You do those usually at 16, I did mine at 14, I was a smart kid. So I stopped playing football for a couple of months and then started focusing on my homework. And I did well. Because they said to me, if you do well at your O-levels, then you'll be happy. Was I happy? No. I had to do A levels, the next level up. And then, please excuse me, I'm being honest, then I wasn't so interested in chasing a football, I was chasing girls. They said, give up going to parties or dances, do your homework, you pass your A levels, then you'll be happy. Have you heard that from your parents when you were young? Do your studies and stop enjoying yourself, and then you'll be happy. And so I stayed at home, did my A levels, I did really well. And because of that, was I happy? No, not really. So then the next thing we did was the scholarships to Cambridge. They said, look, this is really important. You get a scholarship to Cambridge, and your fees get subsidized, and you get really looked after, you get a nice place in university. And with a scholarship to Cambridge, then you're set almost for life. So I believed them again. And I worked really hard and got a scholarship. And then was I happy? Not really. But fortunately, what I did between getting a scholarship was in like October, November, and June or July, when you could actually go there. You had to be 18 before you could go to the university, and I was still young. One thing I did, there were some things I always wanted to do, was to travel. So I did my kind of a gap year before it was popular. You know, one of the countries I went to, where is she? Guatemala. And she said it beautifully, Guatemala, because the Mayan civilization were there. And they were just so kind and so nice. I had some wonderful experiences there, especially when I went to this temple complex called Tikal. It took me 2 or 3 days to get there. And it was so hard to get there. You went through the jungle. There's one thing I didn't realize what traveling that way did to me. For about 3 days, I'd never seen far distances. In the jungle, the small paths were just really twisting around, and they got overgrown with creepers so quickly. So you only saw a few meters in front of you for 3 days. When I got to this temple complex, this was in 1969. Was it 68? Yeah, it was 69. Early 69. And there was no one there. I saw one kind of archaeologist, no one else. So I could go wherever I wanted to. There was no shops or no tourist help. You just went there and explored. And of course, you saw these great big pyramids. You know what I did? I climbed one. Why did I climb one? Because it was there. No real reason, but it was a beautiful choice to climb one of these pyramids. And I had no information. I did no research beforehand. Of course, there was no computers then. So I went to the top of one of them. And it was great that I never had any information. You could just see it. So obvious what they were there for. Because when you got to the top of those pyramids, there was a little kind of, like a shack, a little building, a roof, 3 walls, and the entrance. And when I went and stood there, it was just above the tree line of the jungle. So when I stood there, for the first time in 3 or 4 days, I could see great distances. You could see the horizon in all directions, with nothing between me and infinity. And the air was just so fresh. In the jungle, it was so close and humid. There was actually a wind up there, and it was gorgeous. And I kind of imagined what it would be like, you know, if you were a young girl or a young boy, and the priest led you up to to the top of that temple for the first time in your life. And you could see such long distances. And I can see forever. You didn't need something to tell you what infinity was, and what freedom, what emptiness was. And you had this beautiful air cooling you down. Its religious significance was kind of obvious to me. And I've often said since that time, each one of you one day will find the great pyramids in life. I'm not talking about something built by somebody, where you can see above the jungle of life, where you can see all around in all directions. You don't need someone to tell you. You can see nothing between you or barring you with where you're standing, and infinity going on forever. That was one of those key moments in my young life. And I kind of thank, the Mayan civilization for building those. And why do we have big churches? What do they do? One of the things which those churches used to do, the cathedrals, they were quiet places. And I remember this when I was preparing, to go overseas and get visas and stuff. I used to, in London, really busy, and trying to get all that paperwork done. You get tired. But in Westminster Abbey, that was such a favourite place for me. And I went into that abbey, and there were so many chapels round the back. No one went there. And I could go in there and just sit down on one of the comfortable seats and just meditate. And no one bothered me, they left me alone. And that was my little hermitage in London. Any time of the day or night, no charge. You just went in there and found some peace and quiet. And later on, just before I went over to Thailand, I went into one of those they used to be quiet, and I was so disappointed. It was like religious desecration. I wasn't a Christian, but I was spiritual. They had installed a PA system, making announcements. Please don't leave your baggage unattended. Please, if you want to get a book about something, it's available over here. They were so disturbing you. The peace and quiet was desecrated. Just like the same, if you've ever been into some of those chapels in airports, they're never quiet. They're always making announcements, so you can't enjoy what is one of the most beautiful spiritual qualities of silence. Anyway, where was I going with this? I don't know. Anyway, with metta, can you please explain how we get rid of from self or me mindset? How do we think this is not me? Get away from Sakkaya Ditthi. Oh, that's easy. It's so obvious. I've already mentioned you didn't decide to come here. What do you get out of this? The more me you have, it's one of the reasons why. I don't know why, but people are always asking, like just today, there were so many Sri Lankans and a few Indonesians as well, as a dana over in Bodhinyana Monastery. And a lot of them, after the dana, they ask for selfies. They want to take photographs. I say, I don't do selfies. Buddhists don't do selfies. There's no self to take a picture of. They do wifis. Wifis is much better than a selfie. A wifi, because we're in this together. It's not independent. So that's one wonderful way of looking. It's not a self, but a we. That's why, in relationships, I always mention this story. Few of you are married here. If you are married, I sometimes have done marriage ceremonies. And straight away, when I do a marriage ceremony, after the rings are exchanged, I look at, usually first the wife. I look into her eyes and say, "You are now a married woman. From today on, you must not think of yourself." And she always nods. And I look at the husband, and I look into his eyes and say, "You now are a married man. You must not think of yourself." And I'm just saying this anecdotal experience. If that guy's an Australian, he always pauses and thinks, that's what happens. I've seen it so many times. But he says yes in the end. And then, still looking at him, I say, "Now you're a married man. You must not ever think of her, your wife." I quickly turn to the lady and say, "Now you're a married woman. You must never think of him, your husband." And I love doing this because I also look at the family members as well. And then you can read their minds. You don't have to have psychic powers to read what they're thinking. They're saying, "Who is this crazy young guy in a bald head who's telling this rubbish to our kids?" And then I tell them why I said that. If you're married, you must never think of yourself. That's not a marriage, that's just selfishness. You must never think of your partner. You get burnt out. In a marriage, you must only think of us. You're in it together. And that's when I look at the family members, I go, "Oh, yeah." And I appreciate a little bit of Buddhist wisdom. So I don't get into, I don't know, yeah. So that's how we overcome the sense of self. And I, me. Why do I give talks? All this stuff which I teach you, I already know. What's in it for me? Tiredness. Don't get any money out of this. Just get more invitations, more problems. But anyway, you do that because we're in it together. Retreats are all about us. Not about me, not about you. Next question. When we get deeper in meditation, is there a unity loneness that remains with you? Unity, loneness. Don't know what that word really means, but no. Nothing remains with you. I've only felt deep peace and stillness on coming out of meditation. Okay. There is no I to feel. Great. When I returns and reflects, it was more of a feeling of emptiness than oneness. Great. Nothing, not union. Excellent. People say to be one with everything. With everything? You know what you're being one with? Some things are disgusting. Do you want to be one with poo? It's nice being empty. Have nothing, be nothing. So I totally agree with that. Oh, now. Could relics be able to multiply themselves? If yes, how does they happen? You know the relics? If you go to Bodhinyana, you see in front of the Buddha statue in the community hall where we have our lunch, you've got all these relics. Now they are amazing. I love talking about relics. First of all, they've been there for years. No one has been ever able to steal them or take them away. But recently we had a relic exhibition here over in Perth. Only just one set of relics. And had thousands of people came to view them and worship them for 3 days. Those relics, better ones, more of them, They're in Bodhinyana monastery and they've been there for years. I said, why do you queue up in the sunshine and get boiled inside? Just to see those relics. Come and see our ones, and it's much more easy. But also, I think I already mentioned to you that some of those relics that were given to me by this Burmese monk, and I promised to bring them over to Australia, but I left one set of relics for the Buddhist Fellowship in Singapore. They did multiply. They're all sealed. There's no way they can multiply. You can't get inside them and take them away. They did multiply. And the interesting thing was, I was carrying them through Perth Airport. So you've got to declare them. So you have this little, this card you have, anything to declare. And I'm really honest. So I looked at all the descriptions of the things in there which you've got to, declare. And so it was like human remains. That's the closest I could see to tick. So I showed them the card. So you carry human remains? So yeah, lots of them. So let's see them. So I opened up my bag. What remains of these? These are remains of the Buddha and some of his disciples. And he looked. He couldn't arrest me or anything because he's now declared everything. And he said, too difficult for me. So he got the boss, the head of the customs that evening in Perth Airport. He said, what's the problem? He said, this gentleman is importing human remains. It's actually the remains of the Buddha and his disciples. And he had a look at this. And he said, this is way too difficult, even for me. Get out of here. That was really fun. But relics multiply themselves. Why do they do that? I can't prove this, but the only way it can happen is there are other beings in this universe who respect relics, real ones. And if you are practicing well, they will actually add more, as they did in Singapore. If you are not practicing well, they will disappear. Like what happened in the BSWA, when these relics were given to the president there one year. He told me, he apologized, that he put them in his cupboard at home, thinking that I would take them to the temple when he has an opportunity. He forgot about them. Next time he checked, they'd vanished. There's other beings who look after these relics. They're powerful things. Okay, let's get now some more questions done. How to convince if a young adult is feeling down and anxious that meditation works? Can't prove unless he himself experiences it, isn't it so? So please help a lost mum trying to help a young son who is very anxious. Look, sometimes if a son is very anxious, and sometimes he won't follow his mum, what you can do is you can just leave sort of where there is meditation being held, free meditation and good meditation. It does work. But sometimes he has to do it himself. Just like this, the nearest story I can think of is of this Malaysian woman who came to see me and said, that she was a devout Buddhist and loved meditation. And she said, my husband, who was really Aussie, he would love it. But he refuses even to read a book on it. So I said, that's easy to solve. So I said, go and get a copy of Opening the Door of Your Heart. You know that book. So take it home with you and tell your husband, as he's watching the TV, the footy on the TV, tell him that this is my book, it's holy, please don't you ever touch it. That's all. And of course, while she's out shopping the next time, she's got no right to tell me what I can read and what I can't read. It's my house. So he picked it up, read it from page to page, front to back, and then he comes every week. You've got to have enough psychology to know you can't tell an Australian husband what to do. You just trick him. Of course, I never actually finished that story about, when I went over to Guatemala. Thank you for actually saying that word. It was literally called Guatemala, but the Mayan civilization were the ones who built those beautiful pyramids. But it was that time that when I started going to university, they said, do the work, get good results, and then you'll be happy. But that was the time I started getting, the only word I can actually say which makes a lot of sense to me, started getting suspicious. They said, you pass these exams and then you'll be happy. Were you? And I saw many people who were 3 or 4 years older than I. They weren't happy yet. They got their degree. Now what they were doing? They needed a place to stay. They had a small apartment. They were saving up money to buy a house. And they were also trying to find a partner in life, a wife or a husband to live with. And then they never had enough money even after they finished university. They had to get a job. And when they got a job, and it was even more hard work, they never had enough money. They was in debt with mortgages. And then they had to get a car. And then they had a kid. And that put them more in debt. And they were tied up. They weren't free, for years. And said, my parents and teachers said, once you get a degree, you'll be happy. They weren't. They're working really hard. And then, those of them, their children had grown up. Were they free of their children? No. How many people, their children stay at home? And even in their 20s, they're still living in your home. You're not charging them any rent. It's a pretty good deal, isn't it? So they were staying at home and still had no freedom. And then I thought, hang on. People are saying me to sacrifice my life now. And happiness will come later on. And that really made me dubious. Are you happy? Really happy? Feel free? Always following this advice. Just study some more, earn some more money, look after your kids, or have kids to begin with. And once your kids are all grown up, then you'll be happy. And then once your kids are grown up, you have your own house, you have a nice car, you have enough in the bank. Then we have the Iran war, and then you lose all your money on false investments, and there's no security. But who has security in this room? I've got nothing to lose. Because you don't have anything. That's one of the things people find it really hard. That's what sometimes you go and try and prove who you are. Can I see your mobile phone, Ajahn Brahm? No, you can't. I ain't got one. How many investments have you got? 0. How much income do you get? 0. How can you live? Very comfortably. How many houses do I have? 0. I live in this wonderful cave, but I don't own it. You live in a really weird sense, but it's beautiful and free. But don't worry, because I can't lose anything when you don't have it in the first place. So that's actually that story about happiness which is secure. Dear Ajahn Brahm, in the sutras, when the Buddha says to observe this body in the body, does it mean watch it closely to be in the body as being one with the body? No. This is just the idioms of Pali. They sometimes say, just to compare it, in the Vinaya, they say, do path sweeping of paths. Do dishwashing of dishes. What else are you going to do dishwashing of? It's just a way of Pali. They always say that. Do hair brushing of hair. They repeat it. And it's nothing weird or important. It's just the idioms of Pali. You know, even in English, we have the idiom, it was raining cats and dogs. Have you ever looked at how many cats and dogs come out of the sky when it's been raining cats and dogs? These are idioms. It doesn't mean anything. It's just the way that Pali, when it's badly translated, just gives some meanings which are just not there in the beginning. That's what it means. It's not the body in the body, you just watch the body. Dear Ajahn, during walking meditation, do we keep our attention on our breath? No. If you kept your attention on your breath, you really got into your breath, and then you might step on a snake, or step on a nail or something. Sometimes people ask me, is it possible doing doing walking meditation to get into jhanas? And I always said no, because I think, I don't know how you can get into a jhana and get close. But then I was contradicted by this monk over in Thailand who had lots of bruises and cuts over his face. If you get into a jhana, your 5 sense awarenesses go. You don't know where you're walking. You can walk over a cliff, or just walk into a pond of water. And he kind of proves that, because he had all bumps and cuts on his face. So it's possible, but not advised at all. Because in the jhana, you lose all awareness of the 5 senses. You've just got awareness of the mind, that's all. So if you see anyone here doing lots of walking meditation with a few bruises on their face, you know what they've been up to. What should we observe during the retreat? Loving kindness to self and all beings, or one object like breath, or any sensation that appears in mind and body, combination of the above. Whatever works. Don't just always do the same thing. One of the things I do, which I encourage, is ask your body what it wants to do. When I say ask the body, you're being mindful of the body. Do you want to do walking or sitting? Or lying down meditation? Ask your body. You get some great answers from it. And for your mind, ask your mind what it wants to do. Do you really want to just watch the breath? Or do you just want to do loving kindness? And after a while, you become so sensitive that your mind gives great advice. Not your thoughts. Don't ask me. I'm not your mind. But you ask yourself. And that mindfulness is what you kind of follow. My current distraction is my saliva. You know how to fix that up? It's very obvious. Actually, we do have a dentist on this retreat. You borrow one of those machines. Put it in your if that doesn't work, number 2, try not to think about lunch, especially this time of day. And after a while, just forget about it. And then it just dries up by itself. As things start to get peaceful and the sound of breath starts to fade, sometimes my saliva glands just produce so much saliva that I have to swallow them. It's a distraction, like taking a few steps backwards. Just don't worry about it, and it stops by itself. I used to have lots of saliva and it kind of dribble. But then after a while, it stops. I don't know why it's doing that. But when you feel it's a problem, it gets worse. I mean, why do people have saliva problems in the afternoon? It's a long way away from lunch and breakfast. If one decides to give all of his or her merits with others, what will happen to that person? By giving merits to others, sharing all of your good karma with others, you are making good karma by doing that. So you have more left to give. It's like you give $100 to somebody else and you get $1,000 back. The very act of giving is what works. Does it mean the person would have no merits left, or more merits in return, more merits? Dear Ajahn, it is said kindfulness, awareness and kindness. Sometimes it is said imagine a bubble around your body. Sometimes it's said, I invented that. Or imagine a golden light during metta meditation. It is the purpose of imagining a bubble or golden light or beautiful nature to access the positive emotions like solitude, safety, calm, etc., and associate with those emotions with awareness of parts of the physical body and eventually the sensations of the breath. It's helpful to use imaginations. That's why I do like a bubble around my body if it's a very noisy place. I've done that quite a few times, meditating in the middle of the city or in a very busy place. I sit down, imagine this bubble around me, and I'm in my bubble, like in a cave, and the sounds are much easier to actually ignore outside my bubble. And you get very, very peaceful. Or just, want some of the other things you can imagine. Sometimes if you haven't experienced a beautiful, delightful breath yet, imagine the breath as being the most delightful thing you've ever breathed in your whole life. That's how Ajahn Brahm used to teach. He stayed with us for a range retreat many years ago, and I asked him, can you teach the meditation? He'd always teach in the same way. This is Ajahn Brahm's method of meditation. He said, close your eyes, sit comfortably, and breathe in the most delightful breath you've ever breathed in your whole life. And then breathe out the most delightful, joyful, happy breath you've ever breathed in your whole existence. And that's it. It was brilliant, but a bit too short. So just imagine that. Imagine as you breathe in. It's so delightful, gorgeous. The most gorgeous breath you've ever breathed in. And then you breathe that out. Beautiful, delightful. The reason why is very, very good advice. You use your imagination to recognize the breath as something immensely delightful. And the next thing you can do is, when you're really getting into the breath, imagine it vanishing and this beautiful light happening in your mind. Imagine this light getting stronger and stronger. If you've done nimitta meditations before, you can notice just how effective that can be. especially if you've been meditating and you've had these lights in your mind recently, and you imagine it again. It's gorgeous. Imagination and reality in the mind are not that too far apart. You can turn one to the other pretty quickly. Please advise on walking meditation. When I was small, I was taught to pay attention to each step you take, and even turning on any sound, or etc. How to apply letting go in this. It's nice because you have to, you're walking meditation means you're walking. You just walk naturally. And naturally means you usually go quite slowly. Because people go quite slowly, on one of the retreats which was held here, it was taught by a Sri Lankan monk when he was here. And there was a couple of Sri Lankans visiting Bodhinyana monastery, and they asked, can we just check it out? We won't disturb anybody. So yeah, sure. So they came over here and they checked out the retreat without disturbing anybody. But they came back to Bodhinyana monastery pretty quickly, about 10 minutes later. And their kids, they were just really freaking out. So what's the problem? You know, in the Sri Lankan retreats, many people wear white. And the walking meditation, you usually go very slowly. And the kids said, Ajahn Brahm, you've got to go and save your retreat center. It's been taken over by zombies. And that's what they said. So to this day, when I see people wearing white doing walking meditation very slowly, I call that zombie meditation. Please excuse me. My sense of humor is not that good. Dear Ajahn, do we need to have jhanas and nimittas to be stream enterer? Well, that's a really good question. I really say that's a good question. It helps. I would say yes. Other people would say prove it. And it's difficult to. We discussed this with monks and nuns, and most of us agree that yes, you do need them. And why not? They're not that hard to do if you get a good teacher. But one of the teachings, which I've told a few people during the interviews, because they said, can you get attached to the bliss and the beauty of the nimittas and the jhanas? And the answer is yes. You can get attached. What's the problem of getting attached? In life, you can never say you should never be attached. And I say, in Sri Lanka, if I was on the back of a motorbike going down the Gaul Road, I'll try my hardest to get attached. I don't want to fall off. Same in Indonesia. A couple of Indonesians were saying, do we have to get attached? I said, yes. If you're on the back of a motorbike going along some busy road in Jakarta. Sometimes attachment is good, as now you understand. So what happens if you get attached to the pleasures of the jhanas? And I told the answer and got someone to actually to read it to me. So really they can see for themselves what the Buddha's answer was. If you get attached to the pleasures of the jhanas, there's only 4 things possible. Only 4 things. Stream winning, once returning, non-returning, or full enlightenment. How many of you want to be a soul one? This is what happens if you get attached to the pleasures of jhanas. At least, minimum. Pretty good deal, eh? And I still got the book out next to my seat in the interview room. I can check that out for you later on. So yeah. Within minutes of meditating, my breath becomes imperceptible. Great. I just know that I'm breathing rather than feeling. Is this normal? Yes. And is it also normal for me to all of a sudden get distracted more than I've gotten to this point? Not to get distracted, but if you find that you're meditating and things start to disappear, just what are you focusing on when things disappear? Can you focus on the feeling of peace or the feeling of joy? You may even choose an object. Imagine an object. You're free of the breath. And the body vanishes. You're having a wonderful time. Enjoy. With metta, self-love versus anicca, dukkha, anatta. Is self-love concept caring and protecting your body? A lot of times it's just what you think you own. Contrary to anicca, dukkha, anatta of body. No, they both go together. If you really care about your body, one of the nicest things to do is to understand it properly. To understand it's not yours. When it's not yours, you can love it much more. It's like without owning it. E.g., if we keep on thinking the body is vulnerable for sickness and not certain, will we get sick? Yes. So, what we do is we don't fear ill health. We just have a lot of peace, a lot of joy. You know, a lot of times, that's why, you know, at the end of the meditation in the morning or the end of the loving kindness, by not holding two false views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, is not born again into this world. Sadhu, sadhu. Do you enjoy doing that? I do it, and I've done it so many thousands of times. And then I laugh. And you laugh with me. That happiness and joy, that creates a huge amount of health benefits. Apparently there was a movie done about the doctor, what was his name? Apparently this guy was training to be a doctor, and he made life a lot of fun. He'd sometimes dress up in a tutu when he came to look after the patients in the ward, and made them laugh. What was his name again? Sorry? That's right, Patch Adams, yeah. And I thought that was brilliant. How many times if you're in hospital, you feel terrible, you feel really sick, you're about to die, and a guy comes up in a tutu to serve you. That's really clever psychology. People just feel happy. And because they feel happy, that increases the power of recovery in their health. Has more research been done on that? I just know that very rare I ever get sick. But I remember many years ago, during the range retreat, I don't know what it was, but I just lost a lot of my energy. And so one of the doctors, actually one of the Sri Lankan supporters who used to come to Bodhinyana Monastery, he said, I'm a specialist and I can get you admitted to the hospital in Rockingham, which is not so far from here. So can I just get you into hospital for a week, and then I'll do some tests on you, see if there's anything wrong with you. I said, okay. So he took me to Rockingham Hospital, and when I checked in there, the first thing the nurses asked me when you check in is said, have you got any pajamas? And I don't have any pajamas. So just because I haven't got any pajamas, please don't give me some, okay? I don't have any socks either. So I just told them what I tell everybody. You know, it's either my robes or naked. You make your choice. You know, I was a bit sort of feisty by saying that. They said, okay, we'll take your robes. So I went into the ward and wearing my robes, obviously the bald head. And the doctor was Dr. Mervyn Mendes. And his speciality, He was a gynecologist. So it had my name on there, Ajahn Brahm, Dr. Whoever remembers, gynecologist. Honest. And you can imagine the comments I got. But I mean, that was creating some happiness for me and others. And there's sometimes what I remember, from my time in the hospital, one evening I had to be woken up in the middle of the night to take some special medication or whatever, because they were going to do the test the following day. And I will never forget the nurse who woke me up and gave me this medication. She was just so kind. And I always remember that kindness. Maybe because, I was not, mindful, just woken up in the middle of the night. And she, like an angel, just, please take some medication. I did it straight away. And I always remember that. The kindness of a nurse was so therapeutic. They never found anything wrong with me, but I had a bit of a rest inside the hospital. That was nice. And I had a lot of fun as well. You said by listening to your teachings, we are being brainwashed by you. Yes, I admit it. But if I have a very critical, skeptical, and stubborn mind and find it difficult to believe these until I've seen it for myself, how much of your brainwashing will really fit through a stick? I'll sit and stick. Thank you with all due respects. Sometimes people have showed me these advertisings they have on TV. And they're really stupid. They're ridiculous. They're so juvenile. Why would anybody believe in those? And I still remember when I was a student, when I first went up to Cambridge, I saw this advertisement. Oh, first of all, I always thought if you're in science, like Albert Einstein, he always smoked a pipe. And many of the famous physicists would always smoke pipes. They put tobacco in the end. So what did I do? I bought a pipe. I never smoked cigarettes, but I had a pipe. That's a part of the uniform of being a physicist. So I bought myself a pipe. Then the next thing, you had to put some tobacco in it. Which tobacco should I put? I didn't know anything about pipes. And I saw on the TV, St. Bruno tobacco, the advert. So okay, I'm interested. And so this ordinary looking guy, just like me, just was walking down the street in some town in the UK, and he put this St. Bruno tobacco in his pipe and lit it. And as soon as he started smoking it, this absolutely gorgeous blonde who was working in some greengrocer's shop jumped over the counter and followed him. She was entranced. And he walked a few steps further and past the newsagent, and this beautiful brunette girl. She was like a model, not an ordinary sort of person you see in a shop. She also smelled the aroma of St. Bruno tobacco, and she was also entranced. And after going about 4 or 5 shops, this ordinary man was followed by this bevy of beautiful girls. Remember, I was only about 18 at this time. And so straight away I thought, oh yeah, sure. How would anybody be entranced by tobacco? But I bought some. And I thought I was intelligent. And I put some in this pipe, started smoking it. And the only being who followed me was this dog. That's what I thought. And I thought, so embarrassed. How stupid can you be, believing that sort of stuff? the marketing ploy of Sambuno tobacco, the aroma is irresistible to beautiful women. If you're an ugly woman, you can resist it. So misogynistic. Well, I bought some. It didn't last very long. So anyway, that's why brainwashing is. In these days, you see the most powerful brainwashing advertisements are ridiculous, juvenile. They don't make any sense. That's why they work. They go under your defenses. I realize that. So you are being brainwashed. I admit it. I'm very happy I do that. Make better human beings. That's why I tell funny stories, jokes. And many of the jokes are really silly and banal. And you laugh, but you don't realize you're getting the message as well. Pretty sneaky, isn't it? It does work. That's why how many people come on these retreats? They're always booked out. How many monks actually join Bodhinyana Monastery? Booked out. How many nuns do we have at Dharmasala? Booked out. With metta, 6 senses mind. Can you please explain how mind senses things different to sight, hear, smell, taste, and touch? Oh yeah, isn't a combination of above 5 senses and eye, ear, nose, touch, and body? You know that sometimes there was a teaching of the Buddha to understand what the mind is, especially the 6th sense. You've got to separate it from the other 5 senses. Just like if you want to find out what gold is, this is the Buddha simile. You get a sample of gold and you purify it from any other metal, such as silver or tin or lead or something. So it's just gold, 100% gold, nothing but gold. Then you can do experiments on it. You know, this is real gold. You can find out exactly what it is. Just like the mind. That's how we can do the insight into the nature of mind. It's got to be pure mind, nothing else. And that's why we do the jhanas. So you just got mind and nothing else but mind in the jhanas. You can find out exactly what it is. And this mind sense also allows you to get all these incredible sort of data, past lives, you know, world beyond the 5 senses. One of the things which happens if you experience a jhana, a real jhana, afterwards, you're not afraid of death anymore. What is death? Just the mind separates from the 5 senses, you know, for almost ever, or into the next birth. That's all. You actually experience that. That's why a lot of people said, these meditations where we teach about jhana, you should actually not call them a retreat, call them a Death 101. A lecture how you understand what death is. And there's nothing to fear. That's what happens when you die. 5 senses stop, and the mind continues on for a while. And you understand what it is and how it feels. One of the things about the mind, when it separates from the body and its 5 senses, it can travel anywhere, really quick. There's this one guy I met, and he was over in Karnat prison farm. He was Yugoslavian, you know, now I think Serbia. But when he was young, he got really sick. The doctors were doing doing surgery on him, and he left his body. You know, for him it was floating up above his body. And even though he was only 7 or 8 years of age, he knew the doctors were looking in the wrong place. And he said he just willed. One of the doctors, don't look over here, look over there. And the doctor looked where he kind of thought they should look. And the doctor explained, this is a problem over here. And so they all went to look at that problem, and they healed it. So he survived. He said from that day on, he always knew how to leave his body. And so when I saw him at Carnet Prison Farm, he told me this story, and he said he doesn't mind being in prison. If he wants to go and watch a footy match, he just goes, and the prison guards don't know he's left the prison. He just floated out of his body and go to see the match, and get really good seats as well. And I believe him, everything he said. So sometimes when you know the difference between the mind and the five senses of the body, you know exactly what this body is, and how it's kind of gives you so much more freedom when you know the mind. Okay, oh my goodness, what's this got to do? Can you please share your experience when you were young and went to your favorite concert? I was told you learned about impermanence after the concert. Thank you. One thing I did learn, one of the earliest concerts I went to was a Rolling Stones concert. I was only 11. That really helped me become a monk. The reason was I went in there wanting to listen to the music. Once I went in to the concert hall, all I heard was the sound of girls screaming, "Oh, Mick Jagger, I love you, Mick." I couldn't hear any music. And that really turned me off girls. It was true. Look, I went there to listen to music, not to listen to girls screaming at some silly rock singer. That's one of the early ones. But later on, the other thing which I remember going to some really great performances and concerts. Now, there's one of my old friends as a monk brought one of the other ex-monks to see me today. And his name was Rod Plant. You know who Rod Plant was? He was the lead singer of Led Zeppelin. But this wasn't Led Zeppelin, it just had the same name. But we were just talking about Led Zeppelin. I saw their first concert, when I was only 16 or 17 or something. But all of those great concerts I went to, at the end of the concert, when it finished, it was good music, classical music, folk music. At the end of the concert, I never felt sad. I'll be up there shouting, more, 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 encore. And I enjoyed that music. I walked out of those concert halls or little clubs, and I felt how fortunate I was. The reason I tell that story, because that's exactly how I felt when I walked out of the crematorium when my father was cremated. I didn't feel any sadness. I thought, Dad, what a wonderful performance you gave me. Only 16 years, I wish it was more, but that was beautiful. How can you feel sad when you delight in having been the son of what I thought was a wonderful father? So it wasn't learning impermanence, it was learning to have respect and gratitude. I never thought what was taken away from me. I thought what I had, which was gorgeous. Ajahn said, relax to the max. How do we differ between relax to the max and being lazy? You try to be lazy and it's so boring and it hurts. When you relax to the max, the whole body relaxes. And you're mindful of it. And you release any tension anywhere in your body. And it feels so wonderful. Look, I'm old. I was born in 1951. This is my 75th year. I'm supposed to have many more aches and pains than I do have. And one of the reasons is that I know how to relax my body. You can feel it. I feel my back right now, and relax those muscles just in the lower part of my back. And they follow, they relax. My body feels so good. And sometimes my head. You can sometimes feel the tension of, sometimes I have to be careful what I eat in the evening. I did have some of the chocolate this evening. Because I just try and respect other religions. And so we were given quite a few Easter bunny rabbits, chocolate ones. So if I eat too many of those, you can feel a sort of kind of a tightness in your body. You know what it is, you relax it. And then you relax your mind to the max. You can't relax the body if you don't know how to relax the mind. And then the body gets kind of free. And I often say in a guided meditation, pay attention to the muscles around the eyes and the nose and the mouth. Because that's a kind of a signal that you've got emotional blockages or emotional tension. And I can feel those muscles. And I learn how to relax them totally. It's not laziness. It's more beautiful than laziness. Laziness is dullness. It's your whole face feels alive and at peace. And you close your eyes, and then the whole mind starts to glisten with happiness. And then next question. Ajahn said, meditation in deep can protect. How about we're in a deep meditation, then later there is an earthquake happening, big raining, etc. Anumodana. Those are lovely stories. There's so many stories about that. The Indonesian monk, Sudamo, I don't mind telling his name because he's dead now. But before he died, he told me how he became a monk. He was just a meditator. He wanted to be a rishi, like a hermit. He found a nice part of jungle over in Java, and he went there and he sat down to meditate. He saw nimitta. He said it was like a star coming right towards him, very bright, beautiful. And he said, remember, Indonesian was his basic language. English was a second language for him. So it was really quite cute. He said then he married that star. That's like uniting into it. And then he went into a deep bliss state. He didn't know how long. Time was not important. It was about 6 or 7 days. Didn't notice the passage of time. When he came out, he noticed the part of jungle where he was sitting looked totally different. He asked the villagers, and they were surprised he was still alive. That part of the jungle had a flash flood, and where he was sitting would have been underwater for many days. And because he was underwater, it means he wasn't breathing. I don't know whatever else might have hit him, but he was perfectly safe. And there's so many cases like that. And that's actually when he got into his first deep meditation. And you could tell he had power. He was a great monk. Or even in the suttas, there's a story of this monk who was sitting in the forest. 2 villagers came up, found him, and they said, he must be dead. He's not breathing. So, because he wasn't breathing, and they were kind of Buddhists, they thought, we can't leave him here to be eaten by the jungle animals, and they're already in the forest. So they got some old wood, made a funeral pyre, lifted the monk on top, lit the fire, and did whatever chanting they thought was appropriate. They weren't good chanters, so they did some chanting anyway. Once the fire was going, they were busy, had other things to do. in the jungle, so they left him burning away merrily on the funeral pyre. And the following morning they were quite surprised when they saw the monk come into their village for alms food. And there was not even a soot mark on his robe. That's what happens when you try and cremate a monk who's in jhana. So I'm mentioning that to you. If you see any of the monks here, or me, or the nuns as well, if you see them sitting so peaceful at the end of this retreat, and you check they're not breathing, even check their pulse, and there's no pulse, please do not send them to the morgue. Imagine you send them to the morgue, and when they come out of meditation, those poor morgue attendants, they're the ones who will die of shock. So fortunately, there is a good check you should do. If you find any monk or nun, or any lay people, they're meditating, they were meditating, and then you can see they're not breathing, or there's no sort of heartbeat, check how warm their body is. If they are cold, then they have died. If they're still warm, they're just in deep meditation. Please know that, because it happens. And if it does happen, check their body temperature. Okay, one more question. I have done lots of questions. I think I've answered more questions than I haven't, which is amazing. I've actually managed that. Look at that. That makes me very pleased. I've been meditating, but recently mind wanders so much when, as you said, let go, mind, go to all sorts of things, and mind is not still. So please explain letting go and stillness. Just don't control the mind, but don't actually just rejoice where the mind goes. Just have a look at it, and after a while you get quite bored with what the mind does. If it wants to go here, let it go here. If it wants to go there, let it go there. And after a while, the mind will settle down. Always does. After a while, you're going to be here for a few days, so just let the mind be. And after a while, your mind starts to trust you and like you. It's just like, how many people have had a child, like a son or something, that's always really naughty? You tell it to go over here and it'll go over there, it goes over there and he comes over here. So after a while, just let the child be the child. And after a while, it'll come and say, thank you for trusting me, and be with you. It's wonderful when it just bees with you and it just doesn't go anywhere. Oh my goodness. I did promise to stop at 9 o'clock. So thank you again for the extended session. I've done more than 8 questions tonight. Look at all these questions I've finished. Wait, I'm really proud of that. These are the ones still left to be done. Which ones should I throw away? Okay, you can throw them away for me? Okay. These are the ones I've already. Which one, that one? Nah, I'll throw that one away. If I throw away one which hasn't been answered, it's just your bad karma. Oh, how would you feel about developing a Pali module for the language learning platform? It's already been done, hasn't it? Yeah, Sutta Central. Or is it best delegating said to some of your trusted Sangha? Yeah, it's already been done by Ajahn Sujato on Sutta Central. Sutta Central, S-U-T-T-A-S-E-N-T. No, C-E-N-T-R-A-L. Very good. Okay, that's it. Had enough. Have you had enough? Extra half an hour. I found that actually got more done and just more interesting. Was that okay for you?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, okay, good night. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
What time are we starting tomorrow, Ajahn?
Oh, we didn't finish, so we have to do half an hour earlier. 6:30? No, same time as today.
Yeah.
We do 7 o'clock. We do the chanting, and then after the chanting, 7:15 we start the Q&A. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. How'd you go? Get there on time?